Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is the top of the hour. Thank you all for attending. If you're new, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. A couple real quick things before we actually get into our presentation. Some logistical information real quick. So if I can get there we go. All right, good. So always remember, this is for you. We try to bring fresh ideas, better understanding, and some practical guidance on some things that we have as it's related to performance analytics and reporting inside of ServiceNow. So hopefully you get a lot out of this. Please, ask questions. You see Q&A here, so ask questions about the content, and then also you can ask questions about any other thing that you are curious about or need help with. We will answer the questions related to the content first, and if we have time, we'll get to the additional questions that come in. This is being recorded, and it'll be out in the same community event later on today. It'll also be out on a couple channels that we have on YouTube. So look for that information there. If recording is an issue for your company, you might want to go ahead and drop now. My name is Thomas Davis. I am the host and presenter today. Most of you are probably familiar with me. If not, I'm glad to meet any new ones that are here. So let's get right into it. So today we want to talk about standard deviation in reporting, and we're also going to mention standard deviation in performance analytics as well. So standard deviation is something that probably is a little underused. It could be used more, I think, for a lot of people. So what we want to try to do today is give some clarity into some options that you have that really can point out some different things for you within standard deviation in both reporting and PA. So with that, why do we look at standard deviation? So this is a great sort of explanation of really, when it comes down to it, why you should be looking at standard deviation and what it can give you. So I think it's good to read this, so I'll just do that. So standard deviation is a number used to tell how measurements for a group are spread out from the average, mean, or expected value. A low standard deviation means that most of the numbers are close to the average, while a high standard deviation means that the numbers are more spread out. So again, looking at this from a very high level, you have the ability to look at the mean, right? What's going on most of the time, what that general middle area is. It can go above and below that, or that mean gives you that average of what it is. And then it can also give you what's very high and what's very low. Those may be outliers, but it actually can give you the ability to see when something peaks above or below those different outliers, something that maybe you should investigate. So that's what we're going to try to give you the ability to look at today. Like I said, both within reporting and PA as well. So the one thing that we have that has been around for a few years, but it is something, again, that if you all you have is reporting, and let's say that you don't have PA, or you're not utilizing PA as much as you possibly could, you do have the ability to create what's called control reports and actually see some standard deviation directly in those. And real quickly, I want to walk you through kind of what that looks like and how you actually would create those. And again, giving you the ability to see those upper lower limits and in the mean itself. So in the control reports within ServiceNow, there is a chart called a control chart that you can actually use when you're inside of the report builder. And when you do that, this is an example of what a report would look like. Now, the boxes that you see there that say upper limit, mean, lower limit, those are not there, but those lines are there. So it will take the numbers that you have and actually go ahead and calculate what those upper limits are, what the mean is, and also what the lower limit is. And again, those may be things that you actually never hit, but if you're getting close to that, or if you exceed outside of that, that is definitely something that you should investigate. So here you can see that the blue line that's at the center, that's our mean. So that's our average of basically the numbers that we're looking at, the black line. So that mean comes in right at the middle based on all of those points. And that's exactly how it calculates. So it takes all those values and divides it by how many points it has there. And that's where that blue line will show up there. This is something that's very common. It's been around for a long time, but that's how it actually generates it here on the report. And then the upper and lower limits are represented by the red lines, which indicate thresholds at which activity is considered to be unlikely. But if it does go outside of those limits, then it is definitely something that you want to look into. And the note down there at the bottom, and you can read that on your own, but it's basically telling you how things are calculated within that particular report. So here, again, when you want to create a report, this is just like a standard report. So these are the roles that are actually required, not anything that's unusual as it relates to creating reports. And, you know, the idea behind this is to create a meaningful report that, you know, you must have the right access to the data in order to, and I got a typo there, it says date, but it should say data. You want to have access to the right data to, you know, render what you're looking for on the report. So how do we do it? So here is an example of how you actually can create a control report. And you would go to reports the same way that you would for anything else. Of course, you want to name it. And in this example, we're just going to call it incidents open by week. And then we will actually be looking at a table, a very common table. We're going to look at the incidents table. So I just need to select that there. And then on the type tab, I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to find the control chart. And there it is right there. It is under other. And then configure it. I want to look at, you know, open. So I select open here. And then I'm going to look at per week. And then just to slim down the information a little bit, I want to make sure that I'm only looking at open for this year. And what it'll do is it'll go ahead and it will generate the report. And we'll see that as soon as I click run here, and it'll show us, which is kind of similar to the report that you saw or the screenshot you saw before, but it's a little bit different in my instance. But here you can see that the blue line is the mean, I'm sorry, for all of those different data points. And then, of course, there are the outliers that are there. And in March, and I don't have the best data in my instance, but in March, it looks like that it's going, you know, start diving down in January. And that's just basically off of the amount of incidents that I have inside of my instance. But here, I mean, it's a very simple way of doing it. This has been around for quite a while. I don't know exactly which instance that it came out in, and Adam may be able to answer that. He's here with me today later on, but it is something that has been around for quite a while. So that is something that you can do. And here we can see that, you know, when I hover over the different points in that chart, you know, what it actually is giving us. So again, the upper limit is very high based on the amount of open for that particular week, which is statistically very unlikely. And then also the low is unlikely as well. But the mean right there in the middle, again, it takes all of those, the values in those data points and divided by how many data points there are, and it gives us that mean. So that's kind of to help you understand and explain exactly what you're seeing. So there's another way that you can look at and use standard deviation as well. So if you have a bar chart, you can select as an aggregation standard deviation as well. And again, this requires the same roles as before. And again, you want to make sure that you have access to the right data to what you want to do. So real quickly, I can walk through how that is created. So again, we go to reports and we're just going to create a new one, and we're going to give it a name. And in this case, I'm just going to call it incident business duration by priority. I already have it there. And again, I'm going to be looking at the incident table. And then here, I'm just going to select a bar chart right there. And then under configure, I'm going to select category as my group by. And then I'm going to select priority as my stack by. And I'm going to do those grouped bars. And then for the aggregation, when I click the drop down, I can see multiple, but here I'm going to select standard deviation. I'm going to select business duration. And then I'm going to click run. And then this gives me the ability to see again, the average of what is standing out. So when we look at, for example, for inquiry, you know, for that critical, that green one, right? That's a little bit bigger than the other ones. But again, it's doing that calculation on the back end and letting me know, you know, what that standard deviation is based on the aggregation of the way that they're being counted. So again, this is something that has been around for a while as well. And it's out there directly for anybody to create a report to get that kind of information if they need it. And there's definitely some ServiceNow docs that I, you know, reference later on in the presentation that can give you more, even more clarity into some things that you can do around this type of reporting. So the big thing, so with that, right, the big thing that all of, hopefully everybody is using that actually is a lot more robust and gives you a great bit more leverage in what you can do is KPI Signals. So we did do a prezo on KPI Signals earlier this year that really went in really great depth about what it can do for you. But what I would definitely recommend, and I'm sure that Adam will add as well, is KPI Signals should be your go-to whenever you want to look at, standard deviations inside of ServiceNow. PA is going to definitely give you more information than a standard report can give. And then looking at it from a KPI signal perspective will give you even more. So within signals, you can look at outliers, you can look at short runs and long runs. And short runs is basically 4 consecutive scores that you can look at to see whether or not something's going on. And then you have long runs where you can look at 7 consecutive scores on the same line to see if something's going on is there. And it uses what we call standard deviation, the 3 sigma, which is basically what we're talking about here. So an upper and lower and outlier, short run and long run of that nature. So again, using KPI signals will definitely give you a lot more information and a lot more clarity into that. So to speak to that a little bit more, so when you use KPI signals, it is able to detect, abnormal variations in the scores on a particular KPI, and it can generate signals, which you can see directly in, when you look at the analytics of it and see the actual points, and it'll highlight those signals to you and let you know that something is going on. And it can even go further, and it can actually notify you, and we'll talk about that a little bit here as well. But again, all of the ability that you can get inside of the KPI signals as well is really where you want to do it. So the presence of signals, lets you know that a workflow has changed, or at least it's not statistically stable. The long-term absence of signals indicates that a workflow is statistically stable, but it also can let you know when you have an anti-signal, which means that it hasn't, signals anything in a very long time. So not that that's a bad thing, but maybe something's going on there that you want to look at as well. So what should you do once you find or see or are notified that a signal is there? You should definitely, investigate the signal. And there's a couple different actions that you can take once you have, figured out, what exactly is going on. So you can reset it, right? So you can reset the signal at the baseline, and that the mean and the min max expected values are recalculated from the very first score in the signal to reflect a real and persistent change in the workflow. So you can drive that action, you can dismiss it. So if it's not something that, even though it notified you, but if it's not something that is an outlier in any sort of way, then of course you can reset that. And then you can also revert that information. I know I said 2, but there's actually 3 here. You can revert that. So if the lighter insight justify, you can take a signal action and dismiss it or reset it back to its original state by reverting it. So a couple actions that you can do once you, investigate it and see what's going on there. So some high level features of KPI signals. So again, I spoke to this a little bit ago, but an anti-signal. So basically, if there's a prolonged period of time when there is no signal that's detected, it'll actually notify you and let you know that. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but maybe there's something that you want to look at to, clear up why isn't, it's signaling or something of that nature. So it's really cool that it lets you know that when it's not happening. And then you can, responsibility, you can actually assign a responsible user or users to take action whenever there is a signal that has been created based off of everything. And then, like I said earlier, you can generate notifications to reach out to the actual person that is responsible, but you can also it'll show you directly there on the screen whenever there's a new signal or an anti-signal or no signal at all. It'll actually show you directly on the screen when you're looking at it. So some good high-level features of KPI signals, which again gives you the ability to see, a lot of great information around deviations. And again, like I said, so we talked in pretty good length about KPI signals a couple months ago inside of a presentation. So I would definitely recommend that, you kind of go back and watch that one. And that actually gives some great demos showing KPI signals and how you're able to create some things and look at different signals as they come in, and again, take action on all of those. So I think for right now, I'd like to actually stop because I'm pretty sure that Adam has some even more things that maybe he would like to say that I perhaps missed that would give even more clarity into why we use and look at standard deviation. So, Adam, you have anything?
I think you did a great job covering this. I will add, so standard deviation, something's what we've been asked for a long time. The control charts um, predate me, and I've been working on ServiceNow since Berlin. They've been around for a very, very long time. And if that's what you like, then they're there. And you've never been able to do standard deviation until Rome inside of reporting. So there certainly are use cases for it. And so it's there. We wanted to make sure that you knew that it was there. But, we spend a lot of time on KPI signals. And if I were going to use a control chart, if I wanted to report with standard deviation, generally what I really want is to use KPI signals, because rather than looking at a report, creating a report and then having to monitor it manually, I want to make sure I'm using KPI signals and configure that to check for those anomalies, because it can look at all the data and it can tell me when I need to focus in on something rather than creating a report and having to look at a report. I want to leverage KPI signals. So this is a bit of a bait and switch presentation on purpose. You came for standard deviation, but I really want you to go away going, I'm going to use KPI signals. I need to go look at what do I need to do to tune that, tweak it, configure it, what I need to go through. It's pretty straightforward and easy to do. And it's so much better. I don't have time in my day to look at 1,000 different assignment groups to find out if somebody have variation that's causing me problems, or they're trending up. Are they really trending up? Or are they trending down? And KPI signals allows me to use the computing power to tell me where I need to focus my time, right? Not stop browsing and start actually taking action on it. So KPI signals is what I'd like you to come away from. If I was thinking about a control chart, if I was thinking I needed standard deviation, I really want KPI signals. But we also wanted to make sure that there might be other use cases you need, or there's something we can't put PA on. The PA is not a great fit for something, and there is standard deviation. The use case that I like for standard deviation is to have to use it with multiple data sets. We saw the bar chart that had where my variation is based on the standard deviation, but I might layer that with a line chart that shows me the mean and then see the standard deviation on top of that. If I'm looking at lots of activities, I want to tighten up my variation. I want to reduce my standard deviation. That's a cause for concern for me. So I'm going to layer that in. So maybe the counts, the average time, and the standard deviation of time to resolve are things that I want to see in one chart to figure out, is there a group that's consistently performing well, or a group that's randomly or with a lot of variation performing okay today, but maybe not the tightest process. The standard deviation is going to give me a little bit more insight to process than just average time to resolve.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, Adam, is the control charts are limited, right? You can't create a new type of control chart. You basically just have what is inside of the report builder, but you can configure and create a lot of different signals based on how you want those to act and react based on what you're trying to do within your business. So I like what you said there, the bait and switch, because I think you're right. I mean, the KPI signals gives so much more power to what you can do, and there's so much more flexibility of what you can do inside of signals, and then even seeing them and rendering them on a screen gives so much more clarity to what you're able to do. So it really is a whole lot more use cases that you can fulfill inside of KPI signals than just the standard control chart that really is just the one that that I showed in the report builder. So that's a great point to highlight.
Yeah, and as you brought up with that, in the control charts do 3 standard deviations.
Yes.
And if you have standard deviation, one of the challenges is after this, I expect everybody to go hit their instance, go hit their personal developer instance, go try out standard deviation if you're not doing that right now. But one of the things is that it is based off a report, so you can't do math on the aggregate, and the standard deviation is an aggregate, just like we can't reports work on, you can operate on the rows with a function field, but you can't do math on the aggregates. You can't, in a report, even with multiple data sets, do multiple things. You can't do plus or minus 2 standard deviations, plus or minus 3 standard deviations. So if I need that, I might still use a control chart. You can see 1 standard deviation. I can do the average and 1 standard deviation, but I can't do in a report the mean plus or minus the standard deviation. I can't do 3 bars. So there's some limitations. You couldn't, as far as I can tell, you can't recreate a control chart with standard charts in multiple lines. So there's something here with standard deviation, but it may not be everything you want. But as we go forward, KPI signals is where you want to focus in on. If it is something that you want to operationally see, it's probably something that we want a KPI on, and then we want to leverage KPI signals. So just be aware, this is a new tool in your toolbox. It is something that meets some of your use cases, but it is not, again, you couldn't recreate a control chart in a standard report without using the control chart itself. And the control chart, you still can't modify the settings on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, because we had a KPI Signals Academy session earlier this year, I think it's better from a presentation and a demo perspective to just go back and watch that, because there's really good use case demos that are inside of that session. And then also there is a now learning that is actually out there that can teach you even more as it relates to KPI signals. So really good stuff. So looks like we had a question come in here. So it seems KPI signals is only available in Analytics Center. Is it available in Analytics Hub? If not, why not? Standard deviation based thresholds in Analytics Hub could be very useful. I could answer that, Adam, but something tells me you'd have a more probably politically correct answer on that.
So as we go forward, there's a lot of great stuff coming. And we need to put a safe harbor slide in here, but there's a lot of great stuff coming in here. Workspace is, I think over the next few releases, we're going to see a good way to merge in and step into Workspace. Today, you're either in Workspace or you're not, right? And we're in UI 16 or we're in Workspace. We need to be able to merge in. The backend is the same. So one of the things that I would want to do right now is to get a Workspace to configure a KPI signals. You have access to all your APIs, or all of your KPIs. So my users don't need to be using Workspace. I just need to have one Workspace where I can get to KPI details. I can configure KPI signals, and then I get the workflows from that. I get the alerts. I get what's going on. So depending on where you're at, what version you're on, how your users are using it, we might be a little bit limited on what we can do with KPI signals and KPI details. I'm not expecting it to get backported to Analytics Hub, because we are working really hard to get us into the new world of KPI details and KPI signals. When you do switch over, as I keep saying, we've been trying to get to parity with KPI details and KPI and Analytics Hub. But realistically, there's a lot more functionality in and coming in KPI details than what we had in Analytics Hub. So our goal right now, our focus is, how do we help you get into workspaces? How do we help you get to using KPI details then and KPI signals? The backend is all the same. You don't have to just switch, but you have to have access to KPI details to configure the KPI signals. So I'd be looking at it. And then again, we want to figure out how to get there. We're not putting a lot of resources to backport the functionality into the older stuff. So it's not necessarily the answer you want to hear, but there's a lot of great stuff in the KPI details, KPI signal space. And when you do upgrade, make sure you go back through some of these presentations that we have, particularly the what's new, because we're well past parity into the workspace space, into KPI details. It does more stuff. And whether that's easier to set targets, easier to manage what's going on. A lot of target work was done in Rome as well in KPI details. Again, the back end is all the same, but the UI is all in the workspace area. and I do want to add, I guess, with this too, the standard deviation based thresholds. I believe right now we cannot create a standard deviation indicator. And Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I still am creating generally a count and a count and a sum indicator. I'm still going to do most of. You have min and max if you want an average.
Yep.
If that makes sense to use. I believe there is not a standard deviation indicator, which means you wouldn't be able to have a standard deviation, a threshold standard deviation. Since that would be the KPI itself, where I want to reduce the variance, we're going to generally just use the average and then or the count or the sum or the average, and then let KPI signals detect if there's an issue with the standard deviation. Although you might be able to do it with a formula. There's not a built-in PA standard deviation, but I don't want to say you can't do it. But that's an interesting note that I'll make sure we talk about with some of the product managers to go, how do we do that? Where my target actually is reduction in variation. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. The way that you said that, definitely.
And I'll just clarify this comment in here. Is Analytics Hub, going away? And as everything we're doing, it's not, UI 16 is not going away. I don't want to scare you. We're not going to pull it out from underneath you, but the future is now experience. Workspaces, Analytics Hub, the efforts we're putting into it are very focused in on the now experience world. Lots of great stuff that I'm looking forward to knowledge. I'll tell you that. Just some amazing stuff that's being worked on right now. But we are trying to help everybody get into the new world. For some of you who've been around for a while, that's not just flip a switch and we're in, right? We need to make sure that you're at the same place or better as we move forward. So don't feel that we're going to push you over the edge. But my goal is to make sure that you're highly incentivized, that you want to go. And so we're here to help you move forward. But we're not. I have not heard any discussion that we're going to stop supporting anything or deprecate anything in any reasonable time for any unreasonable time frame that comes through. Right now, we're about helping you move the trend. I want to make sure you want to move forward, and then I want to make sure that you have a nice smooth move to go forward into now experience.
And Adam, was that directly to that question that Pierre put in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. That's there are two worlds right now, and we're going to move forward together.
Okay, great.
If you're looking at things though, if you're looking at what do I want to build, how do I want to approach something, that works now, experience and workspaces are the future.
Okay, good. So it looks like we had a question come in that is unrelated to the content. So let me finish up the content real quick, and then we can get to any other questions. And there's really not that much more other than some useful links that I've given you here. So again, the control reports, there's documentations out there for that and how you create one. And then talks about, aggregation and reporting that's out there. And then of course, KPI signals and, signal, no signal, and anti-signal. It'll tell you a whole lot about that in the ServiceNow docs. Two great Academy sessions that we did earlier in the year that talk about KPI details and also KPI signals. And again, there is the training there that for KPI signals that I referenced earlier in the prezo. So for questions, I guess, and if you have more questions about the content that we covered, don't be afraid to add those in there, but we'll go ahead and try to start answering some questions that maybe are unrelated, but are still important. So anonymous typed, not to change the subject, it's okay. Using configure function field option, I'd like to get the data div between created and now for the records, incidents, demands, etc. Is there a way to do it?
This is my favorite subject, my favorite use case for function fields. So if you don't mind, I will answer this.
Go for it. Yep.
So the question is, can I use date diff, the function field for any date field and now? And now is the trick. Now is the trick, and now is the right now. There's not a way to do now. as a function field in the report designer. And I don't recall the specifics of why that's not there, but I believe you can do it as an admin. You can create a function field in the dictionary that does use now. You can't do it through the report designer. There was some restriction on why we weren't able to do it there. And I like I said, I don't recall the specifics of it. So you cannot do it today in report designer and create a function field. You cannot do date diff between created on now or updated on now, but you can get the same effect going through as an admin. You can create a new field on that record, which is exactly what the designer does, but you can do it. There are, I know there's at least one other restriction similar to this, in that you cannot include dot walked fields in when I'm using the function builder in report designer. I cannot include dot walk fields, and there's a security issue for that to come through. As an admin, as a developer, I can add a function field that uses dot walked fields. I can add a function field that uses now, and then I can use them in reports. But that actual definition for that, you cannot do today in the function builder in report design. I hope that answers your question. But and I believe I'd have to look if you want to post a question in the community. There is a way to find that function field, and I think it is. I think the function is just now, but it's not recognized as a function in the function creator, the function designer.
Great. And for anyone that's on that has not used function fields, that new feature, we did a really good Academy session earlier this year as well that talked in great depth about that information as well. So really great tool, new tool that's out there that gives you a lot of flexibility. So I actually don't see any other question comes in, which is kind of, well, there we go. Okay, so our change management team is interested in implementing the change success score, which uses PA indicators. What I am finding is that our change process does not match the out-of-the-box indicator criteria very well. Is the recommended approach to modify the out-of-the-box indicators to match our process, or disable the out-of-the-box indicators to avoid confusion and create new indicators? If we modify the out-of-the-box indicators, what are the concerns, implications when upgrading? I always tell people to use the out of the box as much as they possibly can, but also recognize that there are situations that you need to do something a little bit differently. I guess my thing, Adam, and help me out here, if you modify the out of the box, when there is an upgrade, does it write over that, or I don't
know? So performance analytics upgrades, we don't upgrade indicators. We don't upgrade analytics as the general rule, because it's not like a bug fix. I mean, it's not a bug fix, right? If you're relying on a KPI, you don't want somebody else, even ServiceNow, coming in and changing your KPI. So we don't. The solution library allows you to do that, and will always allow you to compare what's out of box. At least for the ITSM stuff, allow you to compare what's out of box with where you're at. But I'll go with, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter, or it depends. I'll go with it depends. If I'm adding a field because I just need to filter out a certain type, I'll modify the out of the box indicator source. That's fine. You're always modifying it, by the way, because you're going to change the job minimally. When it runs and who it runs by. You're going to add new breakdowns. There's going to be changes. So don't be afraid to change the out of the box indicators. They're meant to help you. They're not the definitive of everything, with the exception of the benchmarks. Benchmarks you don't want to change fundamentally, but we expect customers to refine them, because just like you might add a new field, you might add a new business. You add a new field, you add a new table, you add something. It's okay to modify them. I would probably, depending on the amount of change, if it is the same intent, you're going to modify the same thing, or you're going to use the same thing, then I would just modify the indicator source, the indicator. But if I'm going to change what's measured, if the description would change, I'll probably create a new one. And the example I can give is, if I'm going to change changes closed or time to close, and I want to change it to time to resolved. Well, there is a difference between resolved and closed. So I'll probably have two different indicators. And if there's not one out of the box, I'll go ahead and create it. But if I am just adding a new filter, a new condition, I wouldn't be afraid to do that. So either way is fine. There's not the indicator sources are very different than like a business rule. We don't have the same consideration because we're not going to upgrade it from underneath you anyway. So you're not going to run into that upgrade issue. You have to manually go compare to what's out of the box with the solution library. So do whatever you're comfortable with. I like to keep some of the out of the box stuff so I can compare kind of what's the standard to what I get. But it's up to you.
Great. Thanks, Adam. I think it's really awesome that you're on today, because I think that even this next question, you probably get a lot of joy out as well. So maybe you want to go ahead and take that one as well. I don't know if you've read it or not yet.
I have not yet. So I'm reading.
So I'll just read it out loud.
Okay.
So filtering behavior depends on the filter type when selecting multiple values using the checkboxes or select multiple input control types. Choice and reference filters use and query, meaning records must match all conditions. Date filters use an or query, meaning records must match at least one of the specified conditions. So this is talking about interactive filter UI. In practice, I find that reference interactive filters use or logic, not and logic. Can you speak to that?
They use in.
Yeah.
I see it. I'm gonna go. I just open up that doc to make sure that that's clearer. Yeah, that note's not exactly right. So they use any individual filter is ins. When there's multiple selects, I mean, you can see it if you turn the debug. So the point I'll bring up with this is the filter not doing what I think it's doing, right? It's not doing what I want it to do. It's probably being that it's not doing what I think it's doing. The debug filter is really key to this. So anybody who can add an interactive filter, there's an interactive filter type at the bottom of debug. I'll go ahead and add that debug. And that debug, as a warning, goes on the dashboard. So everybody who views the dashboard views the debug as well. So be a little careful with that. You know, you don't want to have it just on there all the time. But if you need it, you need it. And on a sub prod, have fun. So I might look at that debug, and any single filter, whether it's choice, multi-select, the reference choices actually don't matter. It's just if it's a multi-select, it uses an in. If it's a single select, it uses it equals. So they're always, any single filter is an in, which is effectively an or, right? If I have multiple filters, they are anded. So I think the note on here, I'll talk to the doc team to fix that. And by the way, if you ever see documentation that's wrong, in the Q&A, we have a specific link. It's perfect. Very helpful, by the way, Pierre, thank you. If you don't like what's in that documentation, if it's not clear to you, the documentation is to help you. There's a little thumbs up and thumbs down. It is incredibly helpful. I'll tell you, we look at every piece of feedback that comes in, maybe not the positives. I appreciate it. Go ahead and do that. But particularly the negatives, it creates a task for our dark riders to go look at that. So if you think this is unclear, if you think this is not working, it's unclear, the example is not enough, it doesn't help you do what you want to do, go ahead and click that thumbs down and tell us that. You can put in your email address, or you can put it in anonymously, whatever you'd like to do. But we look at those things and take everything seriously and try to address all the comments that come in. So please send that feedback in. But to get to it, if I have a multi-select, it's an in, which is effectively an or. And if I have multiple filters, they are anded. You cannot or different filters. They are always anded, but a single any single filter is or. So I hope that answers your question. And again, you can put the feedback in, but we'll take that back to our doc writer to get that note clarified. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Pierre, for finding that. Okay, doesn't look like we have any more So if one pops in while I finish up, then we can look to that. So real quickly, we'll finish up. So these next few slides are slides that if you've been here, you have seen before. So make sure that you go and check out the actual Performance Analytics Academy community page that has all of the previous sessions that are out there, and we'll let you know about the ones that are coming in the future. Obviously use our community page. There's a lot more than just the Academy sessions. There's so much great data. Ask questions. There's a lot of information that's existingly out there, and there are a lot of great people, both customer and ServiceNow employees, that actually answer questions. So ask away. Of course, always go to Now Learning. There's a lot of great information on Now Learning to help you get up to date and know everything that you need to do anything inside of ServiceNow, not just performance analytics. So make sure you take advantage of that. These are some other Academy sessions that are out there: platform, mobile app, and virtual agent. So if you ever have any curiosity about those or questions, make sure that you attend those. The links are there for you. Always show this one. I think it's important. So if you are going to ask a question, this article tells you some really great things that you can do inside of that question to get that answered quickly, and a really great answer to it as well. This just kind of wraps up everything that I just said. In 2 weeks, we're actually going to talk about, we're going to have an employee center overview. And this is basically what's going to, from a development and what it looks like, replace Service Portal. We did Service Portal reporting a couple weeks ago. So we talked about this, and it was asked to get an overview of that. So I have been able to track down a product manager that's going to give us a really good overview of that. That'll actually be our last one for the year, because the next one after that is the 29th, and that is the holiday week. So after that, our next one will be once the new year starts. And it looks like that we have no any other questions. Adam, is there anything else that you want to follow up with before we jump off?
Everything looks great.
Okay. We'll actually give some time back today. So thank you for everyone that joined. And again, if there's anything that you have, any questions or whatnot, you feel free to tag me inside of the community, and we'll try to get those answers for you as soon as we can. Thank you, and have a great day.